What happened in D.C. last night is horrifying, it's tragic, it's awful, but it is not a surprise. And I was watching this, so of course you've heard the news, and we're not a national podcast. I know you're going to be watching news on this probably all night last night and all day today. These two young staffers of the Israeli embassy in D.C. gunned down. It was a couple, Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram. In fact, Yaron had just bought an engagement ring and was planning to propose to Sarah in like a week, which makes it even more horrifying. So as I mentioned, staff members at the Israeli embassy, they were outside an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C. when a young man named Elias Rodriguez from Chicago shot them in cold blood. And the motivation was very, very clear, if it wasn't already obvious enough, given the circumstances under which they were killed, where they were killed. He shouted "Free Palestine" as he was led away.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Yeah, and not just "Free Palestine." He chanted "Free Palestine," as we've heard so many far-left extremists do on college campuses across the country. The same cadence. I mean, he's a far-left activist, and he is cut from the same cloth as the far-left activists who have been doing the same things, who believe the same things, who say the same things on the campus of the University of Washington. And it's not just, his anti-Israel, anti-Jewish animus that's very clear and that motivated him here. But he has all the other trappings of far-left extremism that we've experienced here for years. Again, as I said, his name is Elias Rodriguez from Chicago. But you look at his political activism. So he's a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. One of the things that struck me right away, besides the whole Free Palestine and obviously murdering, I don't know if he believed both individuals were Jewish. The young woman was. The male victim is a Christian, but he's dedicated his life to helping Israel. And I think he even served in the IDF. And so I'm sure that this killer thought they were both Jewish. But either way, it was clearly meant to target Jewish individuals. But what also struck me is his past activism, again, has all the trappings in lockstep with the activists that we see on a regular basis in Seattle that are so dismissed by the Democrats in power here. That picture we just showed you, he's at this protest. There was a black man killed in Chicago where he lives, and it became this sort of anti-Amazon movement. And he wrote, he was quoted in Liberation, which is like some far left rag blog about this, and talks specifically about Amazon and the wrongs he believes Amazon has done specifically in the city of Seattle. He said the wealth that Amazon has brought to Seattle has not been shared with its black residents. Amazon's whitening of Seattle is structurally racist and a direct danger to all workers who live in that city. So do we in Chicago and all across the country want a nation of cities dominated and occupied by massive corporations where only the rich and white can live and the vast majority of us must live on edges of the city and society living in deeper and deeper poverty? I don't think so. And so again, everything about this guy screams the cookie cutter far left Seattle activist. And that's why, anyone who doesn't think that the activists who we have seen ever since the October 7th terror attack operating out in the open with the support of elected officials in the state of Washington, if you don't believe every single one of them is capable of the same level of violence of murdering Jewish people in cold blood, I don't know how to help you see that. You look at some of the things. There's this one clip that stands out to me after the takeover of that engineering building at the University of Washington. A well-known, clear domestic terrorist who's aligned with an organization that's actually deemed a terror organization spoke on UW and said this.
October 7th planted the seeds of revolution in the oppressed and toiling masses of the world. From Venezuela to the Philippines to Kashmir to Fal al-Aqsa is the tip of the spear in the global fight against Zionism and imperialism and serves as a beacon for all revolutionary strugglers.
Yeah, the October 7th massacre of innocent Israelis serves as a beacon. You don't think that woman's capable of shooting 2 people in cold blood? She's cut from the same cloth. All these far left socialist types who, you pick the issue. Pick the issue. Black Lives Matter, where they're burning cop cars in the streets, where they're assaulting police officers, where they're assaulting members of the media, where they're taking over by force 6 blocks of the city, patrolling it with high-powered rifles that the left thinks is so bad, but apparently not in the hands of far left-wing activists. You've got that issue. You don't think that every single one of those people who block I-5, who block the access to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, who scroll Free Palestine and anti-Jewish animus all over the University of Washington, who take over a building by force, who light fires, you don't think every single one of them is capable of murder? And there's no, you have, in a state like this, and we preach all the time, and you guys know this, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at people like Governor I've never heard about Chop Inslee, and Governor Bob, I can't define domestic terrorism, Ferguson.
Whether something meets the definition of domestic terrorism, just I don't know exactly what that definition is.
We have weak so-called leaders who, when it's left-wing political extremism, it gets a free pass. And it has been this way from the Occupy movement to the Black Lives Matter movement. And even with the anti-Amazon animus, which is anti-rich people, anti-white people, it's the same people participating in all of that. And they do what they want. They operate, whether it's violence or vandalism, and every step of the way, they get a free pass. And so what happens? They're emboldened. They're emboldened. They're emboldened. They're led to believe that what they're doing is righteous. After all, the governor won't speak out about it. Bob Ferguson had to be cornered at a press conference on housing and basically had a reporter, Chris Daniels, demand that he answer a question about what was happening at UW 48 hours after it had occurred. And even then, he dodged and ducked, and I can't define domestic terrorism. I don't know. And these are the people that's the governor of the entire state and the former attorney general for 12 years who can't define domestic terrorism, despite the fact that he instituted a domestic violent extremism task force to look at right-wing domestic terrorism. But when the left's doing it, I don't know. And then we have so-called leaders like Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who the only time they'll speak out about something is after the unthinkable happens. She put out a tweet yesterday, very soft. The killing of 2 people outside this event is senseless, unacceptable violence. I condemn it, absolutely. Anti-Semitism is wrong, full stop. My heart goes out to all those affected. As our friend Jason Rantz, who is Jewish, responded, you do not believe anti-Semitism is wrong. You're a purveyor of it, full stop. You're a leading congressional voice supporting anti-Semitic college students whom you refuse to condemn, rooting for and lionizing Hamas and other terrorists. So for Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, she'll speak out after 2 people die in the prime of their lives, gunned down, over the rhetoric that she has allowed for and emboldened. And so is that what it's going to take here? Governor Bob Ferguson, Mayor Bruce Harrell, really 99.9% of Democratic lawmakers in the state? Somebody has to die, I guess? People have to be gunned down in cold blood for you to say something and come out like you all along have thought it was so wrong? And then you've got State Representative Sean Scott, who doesn't stay silent on it. No, he condones it. He puts out messages saying, how can we help the far left anti-Semites who were arrested at the University of Washington after a hostile takeover of a building and lighting things on fire? How can we help them? So you've got a state lawmaker who condones it, aids and abets it. And we reached out to the highest ranking Democrat for a response to that. The Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins. Do you think, Nicole, ever got a response from Lori?
I did not.
Do you think that you would have got a response from Lori Jenkins had you been asking about right-wing extremism?
Probably.
Probably wouldn't even have had to ask for it. because they would have been all over social media holding press conferences. Right-wing extremism, bad, 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 which I agree. Any form of political violence or extremism, as we've very consistently called out, bad, bad, bad. January 6th, bad, bad, bad. But then you compare that to their response or lack thereof, or their support and condonement for far-left violence. I remember in the days leading up to CHOP, which, by the way, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the occupied protest zone. I remember city council members putting out an all call, we need to get to the front lines in support of our constituents. I remember then Seattle City Councilwoman Tammy Morales coming out and saying, don't tell my constituents that vandalism never solved anything. Absolutely insane. I have seen a couple Democrats in our state speak out about this kind of conduct. A couple. The only Democrat in the state house I've seen is State Rep Maury Levitt, who condemned what was happening at UW. And it stood out because it was like the only person doing it. And then, of course, Congressman Adam Smith has been very consistent. He's been on this show. And Congresswoman Kim Schreier as well. Both of them who spoke out about this anti-Semitism. And they paid a price for it. They had their homes vandalized. They were made to feel unsafe in their own homes, but they still did it because it was the right thing to do. It was the morally consistent thing to do. But there is a lack of moral consistency on the left that's terrifying and troubling. And they are the party of political violence. They are absolutely the party of political violence, yet they have everyone else thinking because of January 6th, 4 years ago, that it's the right wing that you have to be scared of. And it's this gaslighting that the media perpetuates and pushes continually. And then they turn a blind eye to the same type of conduct or even worse on the left. And I don't know at this point what to do about it. And it's one of those things, this is one of the key issues that has pushed me so far away from the Democratic Party. As you know, I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was very anti-Trump up until last summer, like vehemently opposed to Donald Trump. This specific issue is one of the key things that has driven me out of the arms of the Democratic Party and into the arms of Donald Trump, frankly. Even though I don't like January 6th, and I don't think Donald Trump did much to help the situation. But after 6 months of left-wing extremism in the summer of 2020, and looking around at my fellow members of the media and politicians and thinking, is no one going to say anything about this? Being mobbed and having to seek refuge in a fire station, I'm thinking, is no one going to speak out? Is no one going to defend us, defend anyone else who's being victimized? And then, January 6th happened and it was awful. And then when I'd ask questions about, okay, even when I was in mainstream media, hey, I know January 6th is bad, we're covering it, all this stuff. But don't you think that you guys should have said something about Chaz, Chop, and the riots and all of that stuff for the last 6 months instead of condoning it? And I'd be accused of whataboutism. Oh, you're distracting from January 6th by going back in time. Like, no, I'm pointing out a clear moral shortcoming that you have and these blinders you have, where for 10 straight years, I felt like I had been a professional protest coverer, and all I was doing was covering riots and being assaulted by Antifa, the little ninja cosplayers, and then have my fellow colleagues in the media go on the news and say things were mostly peaceful. And it's just nuts. That really was one of the things that started my red pilling, this whole moral inconsistency. So more people are going to be killed. More Jewish people are going to be killed, hunted down on the streets of the United States of America. And people like Bob Ferguson, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, all the Democrats who have not saw fit to quickly and unequivocally condemn this kind of conduct will have blood on their hands. They will have blood on their hands. And unless our friends in the legacy media also start to demand consistently answers from Democratic leaders, comment from Democratic leadership on these things, nothing is going to change. I mean, I can yell into, and yes, we do have an echo chamber. We have an echo chamber of people who have a good head on their shoulders and who are morally consistent and don't have a problem thinking for themselves, thinking outside a political box, and calling out when something is wrong. I think you guys are absolutely epitome of what it means to be morally consistent, because I see it from you all the time. I see it in our comments. But for some reason, we have this inability outside our sort of bubble, and I'm not saying we're the only ones. Team undivided, this family that we've created, are the only ones capable of doing it. I think other people are as well. But the people who really need to hear that message and really need it to be driven home how dangerous the situation is that we've created in Washington state, the legacy media are the ones who are going to reach them. And the legacy media has essentially become hopeless, helpless.